Hi, welcome to today's tutorial, which is how to make reusable food wraps at home. The only piece of equipment that you'll need to add alongside one of my kits is an iron. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. So today's tutorial is going to be based around my beeswax food wrap kit. These will also be available in soy wax for vegetarians soon. So I'm just going to give you a quick whiz through what's in the box and then we'll move on to the tutorial. So this is a beeswax kit. As you can see, the back lists out all the contents and explains how to make the kits, so it's perfect if you're gifting it to someone. And I'm just going to quickly show you what's inside of the box. So each kit will come with a full set of colour instructions, as you can see, as well as some information on how to use and clean and store and replenish your wraps. So there's a full set of instructions there. Now you can see that there is a hand grater included in the kit. That's because this wax mixture is very sticky and you won't want to be using a grater that you use for food. So you can keep this separate for your adventures in wrap making. And here's the beeswax block. That's a mixed block using beeswax and resin and jojoba oil, and it's just wrapped in the tissue just to protect it really, and make sure that it doesn't get any bits of dust and flecks of things like that on it. So that is the block. So you've got the block and the grater, and then you'll see that there is some 4 pre-cut sheets of baking parchment. That is to protect your iron and your ironing surface. And then each kit contains a medium piece of cotton and a larger piece of cotton material. Now these are 100% cotton and they've been pre-washed using soap nuts and pinked around the edges so that they don't fray once your wraps are made. So that's the contents of our kit. Let's move on to the tutorial. Here's what the block you will receive will look like. They vary in colour, just depends entirely on the wax that I've had in when I've made the block. They all work exactly the same way. And the first thing you're going to need to do is grate your block. So the reason I include a grater in the kit is because, if you can see from this grater, once you've used it for this wax, because it also has the resin and an oil in, no matter how you clean it always has this kind of greasy, I don't know if you can see that clearly on the camera, kind of greasy film on it. And I will show you how to clean it, but I just personally think it's better to have a separate one for these wax blocks, which is why I've included one in the kit for you. Now I'm going to make a medium wrap for you today so you can see the process. As I mentioned, the other thing that you need is an iron, and I use an old pot just to grate, just to grate your block into. So I'm going to take that block that's already been grated. I'm just going to hold the grater over the pot and grate into the pot. And this is a bit noisy and I may speed this section of the video up, but the blocks are quite tricky to grate. It's cold in here today and they're quite sticky. You'll see in a second. I'll grate a good bit of it and then you can see the kind of coating that you get on the grater. So you can see there that that's grating nicely into this pot. So I'm going to know from experience I'm going to need a little bit more for a medium block. So I'm just going to keep grating, so I've got plenty of wax. So what I used to recommend to people in my workshops was to grate the whole block in one go. It's quite tough going. It definitely doesn't grate as easily as cheese. You can see I'm making quite a bit of mess here. Probably should have put a piece of paper underneath. So I've probably grated, this wasn't a whole block, I've probably grated about a third of a block here. But what you could do is grate the whole block and then keep it in, this is just an old cheese pot, keep it in there, and I tend to keep mine in the fridge or somewhere cool and dry so that it doesn't stick back together into a block. But if you're doing this in the summer or in a very warm room, you'll find that you won't get this sort of fine crumb, you'll probably get sort of claggy lumps. But that's, again, completely normal. So that is our block grated. The next stage is going to be to make our wrap. So I'm just going to scrape all that extra wax into the pot, and then we'll get on and make a wrap. So the key thing when making a wrap at home is your surface. Now I just do it on the studio here on the kitchen worktop, which I then protect. I've got an old sheet of, a bit of an old cardboard box, just covered with some tin foil and some sort of parchment paper, and I just have always used that in the studio as the bottom surface for creating the blocks. And the next thing you're going to need is your 4 sheets of baking paper. Now the reason you've got 4 sheets is to help completely protect your surfaces. So you can do this on top of your work surface, on top of a piece of cardboard like I am here, or on top of your ironing board. If you're using your ironing board, just put an old tea towel or something like that down. What you really don't want to do is get any of this wax mixture onto your iron or ironing board. So we've got 2 sheets on the bottom, and the next thing we're going to do is take our wrap and place that in the middle here. And then we've got our pot of grated wax mixture here. And a little goes a long way with this. You're going to see, hopefully be able to see through the paper, that as it melts out, it spreads. And we're going to, so if we give a fine sprinkle all over the wrap, paying particular attention to the edges and the corners, and you'll see, there's a little hair there, we don't want that in our wrap, that these blobs of wax will melt and spread, and that's what we're going to do with the iron in a second. So I've got my iron over here, and I've got it on a medium heat. You don't want it too hot. Some materials, even if they've been pre-washed, sometimes the colours, especially pinks and reds, may bleed slightly into the material, and I've found that the hotter the iron, the more likely that is. So don't have your iron too hot. Spread your mixture around your wrap, and then you want to take another 2 of your sheets and place over the top of your wrap. Now, if you have a really expensive iron, definitely maybe place some more baking paper or another, what's the word I'm looking for? Tea towel on top. And then you want to take your iron, as I say, it's on a medium heat, and I'm just going to start gently pressing down just to start to melt the wax. And you'll see, hopefully you'll be able to see, that in places parts of the wax start to melt, and what's going to happen is all that grated wax is going to melt. So I can see I'm gently plodding the iron down because I don't want to tear this paper and get any of that wax onto my iron. So I'm just going to spread that melted wax around. Now you may think that's all the wax melted, and as you can see the wrap isn't completely covered, but you will be amazed. I may speed this video up slightly in a second so you don't have to stand and watch. However, you will see that that wax is going to go a long way. And you'll see down in this bottom corner, if you watch here, you can see that wax spreading, pushing it in to the whole wrap. So once you've done you're happy that all the wax is melted, take your iron away, take your paper off, and you can have a good look at the material. If it's a dark material, I suggest turning it over at this point, and then you can clearly see the bits of the material which have taken wax all the way through, and the bits which might need a tiny bit more wax added. So I'm just back with my pot of wax. Now you can see that most of the wrap is covered in wax, but there are a few areas where it hasn't taken. So I'm just taking a few more pinches and putting that wax in the gaps. Now the more wraps you do, the more wax residue you'll get on your paper, and the less wax you will need to put on your wrap. So the first couple of wraps will always take a bit more wax, but once you've got a residue on your paper, that will get slightly easier. So I think I've covered all the gaps there. I'm just going to take my paper, make sure that I'm putting the waxy side down on top of the wraps, and then going back in with the iron. So I've gone back again. I'm just going to melt that extra wax that I've added. I've speeded this section of the video up because I'm basically just repeating exactly the same process. As you can see, I'm working the wax and trying to be as frugal as I can with the wax, because it's better to have a nice even thin coverage of wax on the wrap. So another look at that to see how close we are. So I've got quite a lot of wax on the paper now. So another thing you can do if you're not worried about creases is to fold the wrap on itself where there are lumps of wax. Occasionally you might get these little flecks. They're just parts of the resin. So nothing to worry about, you can just brush them off. So you can see this wrap's nearly there. I don't really think there's a tiny bit there which needs a little bit more wax. There and there. I'm going to put a bit on that corner down there and along this side. So it's definitely better to keep going back and adding more wax, because if you put too much wax on your wrap, it's going to be clumpy, and you're going to get a thick layer of wax, and the wrap won't work quite as effectively because you'll be getting lumps flaking off all over the place. So here I am again for the final time, just giving a last tickle to the wrap and making sure that all the edges of the wrap are covered with the wax coating. It's definitely something that you get used to over time, knowing how much wax mixture to add to a piece of material. It was really cold in the studio on the day I filmed this, which is why it took me 3 attempts, but it's good to keep showing you the process anyway. But yeah, you probably only need to do this once or twice. So the fabric's completely covered in the wax material. They're quite hot. You want to get it off of the paper while it's still very wet, and then just waft it about a second. You'll see that's already starting to set and seize up, and we'll come back to you in just a second when it's dry completely and show you how to use it. So here I have a selection of wraps here that I've made. Here's the one that I've made for you in today's video, and a couple of larger ones. I'm just going to show you how to use them. I didn't have a sandwich with me today, but I thought this would be a good sort of size to show you how I would wrap a sandwich. So here's the wrap that I've just made. It's quite stiff, as you can see. When I'm wrapping sandwiches, you don't want to press down too hard, so I tend to use the heat of my fingers to stick that together. So you can see that wrap's already stuck together, and then you can just run your finger along there slightly to get that to stick together. And then I like to roll the ends up like this and pinch them down so that your sandwich is completely sealed and doesn't get squashed. You can rub a bit of heat into the wrap there just to activate it. Heat from your fingers is what's going to make these wraps stick together. So if you use your heat along from your fingers along the edge there you go, you've got a nice packet of sandwiches ready to go in your lunchbox. When you're covering bowls and things like that, I don't know if this wrap's going to be big enough. Yes, it is. So it's quite cold in here today. So the bowl's cold, the wrap is cold. So I'm just going to scrunch this wrap up in my hands, get it warm. Sacrilege, I know, because when you've got a lovely, nice new wrap, you want it nice and smooth. However, I'm just going to demonstrate. So if you're using your wrap to cover a bowl, this is how you would do it. You would not want to put your wrap in direct contact with anything which can give you food poisoning. So you wouldn't wrap a piece of raw chicken or bacon or anything like that in one of these wraps. They're breathable, but they are cotton underneath, and although they're coated in the wax, that is not going to stop it from giving you food poisoning. So if you've got chicken or meat or anything that could give you food poisoning, I would say put that item in the bowl and then use one of your wraps to cover the bowl. And as you can see, just the heat of my hand is gradually making that wrap stick to the bowl. As I say, it's a bit cooler in here today, but you've got a nice cover on the bowl there. And exactly the same with a plate here. So you'd have your food or whatever on your plate, and then you just take your wrap and wrap it around your plate. Again, it's going to be the heat of your hands making that stick to the plate. And that's just basic 3 quick ways of how to use your wraps at home. Another quick question I often get asked is how to store and look after your wraps. So your wraps can be washed. Obviously, if you put them in scalding hot or boiling hot water, then the wax is going to melt off. So I tend to, if it's been covering a bowl or anything and it's clean, then I don't wash them. I just make sure it's nice and smooth, and I keep all my wraps rolled and stored in a drawer in my kitchen, away from heat, dust, and obviously things that might stick to them. It's easy to see your wrap at sort of the size it is, so when you're looking to cover a bowl or something, you can grab the size that you need. So this is a slightly larger wrap here. Some people choose to fold their wraps. Again, that's absolutely fine. You can keep them folded like that. It's quite difficult to guess what size wrap you're grabbing if you fold them. So if you've had sandwiches or anything like that and there are a few crumbs, you can just brush them off. And then if they need washing, you can wash them in warm, not scalding, soapy water, and then just hang them out to dry. And when your wraps get a little tired, which they will after time, if necessary, you can just pop them back between some grease-proof paper and give them an iron, and that will refresh them. If you're finding that the material feels different and you can see that the material isn't completely covered in wax, then you can get another block or from myself or someone else and cover the parts which need recovering. So you can buy reusable or wax repair blocks online and from lots of independent people that make wraps and things. If you've had a go with this kit and you've really enjoyed it, then let me know. I would recommend having a go first with a few wraps, seeing how you get on with them, and then if you like using them, and then you can use your own materials at home. You can upcycle materials, make as many wraps as you like, and then you can eventually transfer into being completely plastic free. So happy wrapping, and thanks for watching this video. Hope you enjoy the kit if you've got one, and just pop me an email if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.